All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's have that conversation. And here's a simple question for you. Are you comfortable blowing the whistle on any corruption incident or any other criminal issue? Are you comfortable blowing the whistle? Twitter Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's talk about that because that's what you're talking about. There's quite a number of instances that have happened. Prison breaks left, right, and center. There's corruption in different places. Somebody's always seeing it. But are you comfortable talking about it? If not, why? That's what we're talking about. Joining me now is Julius Muraya, Deputy Director, Civil Litigation and Asset Recovery at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Thank you so much for making time. CPA Spencer Sankal is also here, former accountant, Masai Mara University. He's gone through it firsthand, blew the whistle on a corruption incident. He was let go at the end of it all. He'll tell us his experience. Honorable Dr. Irene Kasalu, Women Rep for Kitui and sponsor of the Whistleblowers Bill, is also here with us. Thank you for making time. And Charity Kagwe, Head of Criminal Justice and Anti-Corruption at the UNODC, is joining us online. Thank you so much for making time. Honorable Kasalu, I'll start with you. You're the sponsor of this bill. First of all, how far is it in the process before it is approved? And what are the highlights of it all? What were you looking to achieve?
Thank you, Trevor, for having me this morning. And let me begin by saying that every major graft in this country has one denominator, which is whistleblowing. When you begin and look at the incidents of the Golden Bag, we remember a brave Kenyan by the name of James Munyaeke. We go to the Aglo-Listen case. We have a brave Kenyan who was James Githongo, who even after blowing the whistle had to flee the country to the UK. And then, of course, we have my fellow panelists here, a very brave young man, Spencer Sankal, who, of course, who blew the case of the Marais. I think that's how we call it. Yes. And after that, he was actually sacked. We also remember the case of Jacob Juma, who exposed a lot of government irregularity. What happened to him? He was murdered after that. We have recently the case of Isiolo County, where we have James, I think is Ibrahim Mutai, who was a blogger for the county government of Isiolo. He was able to expose corruption cases. What happened to him after that was actually given a suspension. And of course, this bill, the Whistleblowers Bill, does not only cover economic crimes. We also remember the case when we had the issue of COVID onset, that was last year. The government clearly said that there were no longer flights that were landing in the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. But we have a gentleman by the name Ali Gire who was able to actually capture on a camera what was happening. Some planes were landing. What happened to him? The following day was given a suspension. So I want to say that this is what made me to come up with this bill. Because we look at very brave Kenyans who have been able to expose some major misuse of public funds, and that nothing has happened. So briefly, let me say that the overview of this bill is to create a framework where the whistleblowers are able to air and give information, and also being able to, they are protected by the law. So that we no longer have them being victimized, we don't have them losing jobs, and that kind of retaliation.
So does that then mean that they would be put in a certain place, or that's just that their rights will be guaranteed for the period that the case is still being
Their rights will be guaranteed. And also this bill also seeks to create a reward fund so that they can come out and they are protected. You mentioned the case of the prison break.
Yes.
And I'm sure the reward also had an aspect why these guys were courageous enough to come out and to go after these prisoners. Yes.
All right. Sankal, you have gone through this firsthand. Tell us your experience, and do you think the law failed you, or is it the systems that were against you on this?
Thank you again for having me this morning. Actually, I believe, and it is well that we have the Honorable Member sponsoring the Whistleblowers Bill, because what ideally happens, or the script, the way it is scripted, is like when you whistleblow, it is reduced to an employer-employee relationship. So they don't want to bring in the aspect of whistleblowing. So the victimization and everything, it boils down to an employer-employee relationship. So the law as it is not adequate enough to cover for people who have whistleblown.
Yeah.
Because the Bribery Act, for instance, it's only a section, Section 62, I think. It's only that one that covers, and it only covers the bribery aspect, not the corruption or whistleblowing aspect of it. So I believe, and I think Honorable Kasalu, before their term ends, I believe she will sail the bill through so that it is protected, because, you know, corruption has a very big impact, on, not only on the economy, but also on our well-being.
Tell me your experience right after you blew the whistle on this whole corruption case at the Mara. We, in fact, call it the Mara heist with the Waiga Maura. How did your life turn?
Well, it has the positives and the negatives. And I choose to dwell on the positives, because the negatives mainly were the name calling, outright blackmail, and character assassination. But on the positive side, after I got fired, ISPAC, which is my professional body, and TI Kenya and Amnesty International Kenya, they came together and actually made me a consultant for the three bodies. We are trying to set up what we call a public defenders fund, so that it takes care of those that are most vulnerable. Because in this situation, most employers want to make you feel as vulnerable as possible. And in most cases, is to cow you down, because now you are fired, but you are still testifying before people who did whatever they did. So what we thought, the three bodies, is we can set up a fund to take care before, of course, before the Whistleblowers Bill becomes law. We can take care of those who choose to whistleblow, because I know there are so many, and it is not only accountants. I only happen to be an accountant, and you remember I was not alone. So we want people who whistleblow, and they have the technical know-how of how the whole thing rolls down. So since I was fired, that is what I have been up to. We've been setting up a public defenders fund, and I hope we will come to launch it here, and so that we take care of as many people of goodwill, because this is a public interest thing, as many people of goodwill as possible.
But looking back, would you still, in hindsight, and they say hindsight is 20/20, having gone through everything that you went through, would you still do the exact same thing that you did, and would you advise others to do it, considering that at least you have someone who came to your rescue, but there are those who they whistle blow and nothing happens, they're fired, nobody cares where you went?
Actually, what I would say, whatever it is that we did, we were a team of us, it's not out of the ordinary. Actually, in our most of our core values as organizations, we always cite integrity, confidentiality, blah, blah, all those things. But now when it comes to the real deal, that's where now people don't want to go into. But for me, I've always insisted, I was doing my work, I was just upholding my professional code of conduct and upholding the organizational values of integrity.
Which explanations were you given for being fired?
Okay, I was told maybe it was cyberbullying. So it was basically cyberbullying, and then broken down into 9 points. So that was it.
What is missing here? Are we lacking the right laws, or is it just the people implementing them? That is where the problem is.
Trevor, thank you, and good morning, viewers. One of the major things that we are lacking is actually the framework. The right legal framework and institutional framework for protection of whistleblowers. We do have the protection of witnesses, but you realize the whistleblowers will have blown the whistle long before they become witnesses. So that's a major gap. We realize there is a need to protect witnesses. The same need should have driven us, or ought to have driven us, to also protect whistleblowers, because you realize actually some of the witnesses are not...
what is missing here? Are we lacking the right laws, or is it just the people implementing them? That is where the problem is.
Trevor, thank you, and good morning, viewers. One of the major things that we are lacking is actually the framework. The right legal framework and institutional framework for protection of whistleblowers. We do have the protection of witnesses, but you realize the whistleblowers will have blown the whistle long before they become witnesses. So that's a major gap. We realize there is a need to protect witnesses. The same need should have driven us, or ought to have driven us, to also protect whistleblowers. Because you realize actually some of the witnesses are not, they did not come forth. It is out of investigation and recording of their statements that they became witnesses to a case. So they are state witnesses, some even unwilling.
Yeah.
But you can imagine a whistleblower who has taken it upon himself or herself to bring it to the public attention of a misconduct or abuse of human rights or corruption or economic crimes. That's a huge public responsibility that that person has assumed. Yeah. And it is only right that that person is protected. And it is only right that we do have the appropriate reporting channels, including the anonymous ones. Yeah. Indeed, what we have done as an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is to develop a system for anonymous reporting, because we are so dependent. We are extremely dependent when it comes to corruption on information which is coming from others. Individuals out there, brave Kenyans, patriotic ones, who are ready to report on corruption. Because basically corruption, we can't benefit in terms of investigating corruption unless we do have these reports. Yeah. Corruption happens in circumstances which are concealed. It's not an open crime. It is organized. Yeah. People have decided to do what it is that they are doing. Even those who are responsible in ensuring that the right thing is done are the ones who are actually perpetrating corruption and economic crimes. Yeah. So without the informer, without that person who is ready to sacrifice a bit, go a step further in committing himself to the public cause, we may not be having a lot of investigations. Yeah. So we are truly dependent on that. And I believe that the right framework is still missing, and that's a huge gap when it comes to even tackling corruption and economic crimes, and even generally dealing with integrity in public.
Yeah, but it is this sacrifice that is where the pitfall is, because seated right next to you is a certified public accountant who blew the whistle and lost his job. When people hear that, as the EACC, and you're in charge of civil litigation, does he have recourse, number one? And how then do you convince the public that it is okay to stand your ground and say something wrong is happening where I am without bearing the brunt of it all?
As the law as it is, there is certainly some recourse, but it is fairly blunt, because what we have are the general laws, the general labor laws, fair labor practices, provisions, which are within the general labor laws, which can be cited in that if you are victimized because of blowing the whistle, because of saying that there was a misconduct, that's not really a ground for dismissal or disciplinary action. We have the human rights provisions. We have the Fair Administrative Act, all of which tend to protect any person who would have blown the whistle. Yeah. But you see, that is fairly blunt. That is subject to ordinary procedures of trial in court, of giving notices, and making applications in court. That's not the right thing. Yeah. The right thing is what is provided for in the bill, and what many other countries have already implemented under the protection of whistleblowers. Yeah. Just in the same manner in which we thought of coming up with the witness protection. Because if you were to wait for a witness to say that I'm being harassed, to cry to human rights bodies, then you are not really doing the right thing.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let me bring in Charity on this. Charity, good morning. You know, Kenya has quite a number of robust anti-corruption legislation and policies put together. Why do we need a whistleblower protection bill? Aren't the current laws sufficient?
Apparently, as we've heard, you've heard from Spencer, who dealt with the need to really upgrade the kind of support that is given to people who are courageous enough to step up and report and do their national duty. So I definitely would say that this is an extra step that will help the whistleblower to feel confident that they will be, as they step forward, there are structures in place to make sure that they are not victimized. There are structures in place that are known to everybody. And that will help us to be able to detect the bribe or the corruption before it happens, during the time it's happening, or after the time it's happening. It will help the court procedures, because these witnesses will feel safe enough to come to court, feel safe enough to contribute to the court process. There can be no proper court process without proper investigations. The investigations are backed by brave people, such as the one that you have today in the studio. So this is an extra layer of protection that will be offered to the people who will come forward, and you also encourage other people to come forward. And it's been seen to work in several other countries, such as Nigeria and other countries that are in our region, where people have been protected, not only protected but rewarded for coming forward and contributing to the end of this scourge that is costing us so much in terms of human suffering and development.
Yeah, but Charity, what are you doing generally as the UN ODC to implement the United Nations Convention Against Corruption?
So what we do as the United Nations Secretariat to this particular convention is to support member states with technical assistance when it comes to implementing what they have said they will implement under this very far-reaching, overarching convention that covers all forms of ways in which you can protect, with which you can deal with issues of corruption. So it comes on issues of crime prevention, the prevention of corruption, the recovery of assets, the protection of witnesses, the criminal justice trial process itself. So we offer technical assistance. And this area, so this is how we have partnered with Honorable Kasalu in being able to develop this particular legislation, just walking with her the path of developing a legislation that will support, that will be a huge step in dealing with issues of witness protection and allowing people to move forward and contribute. Many people do want to whistleblow, but feel afraid to come forward. So this will be a step forward in giving that kind of protection. We also have other programs, because we understand that the issue here is an issue of culture. For a very long time, or not just in Kenya, but the world over, corruption has been seen to pay, and pay very well. So there's need to re-educate the young people that on the ills of corruption, that the payment that you get is very short-lived with a very high price. And so we are working on issues of education for justice, dealing with both junior school level and higher school level up to university level. Understanding the price that you pay for corruption is, while it might look good at the short run, the eventual price that we pay in all areas, including climate change, including poverty, and as we have seen most recently, very, very much has been the death of so many people due to corruption that has taken place around the COVID-19 issues. So this is this kind of education of the upcoming and next generation But we also have public and support to the private sector, so that there can be an understanding that actually integrity does pay and not corruption. The narrative for a very long time is that corruption pays, corruption is a necessary evil. But under the convention, we are partnering with private sector to show that actually integrity in the long run pays, and pays much more than corruption would ever do.
All right. Honorable Kasalu, so you're in the tail end of your term, and we certainly hope your term gets renewed by the people. How confident are you that this will go through before this parliament's term comes to an end?
Before I respond to that, let me just say that there are some existing laws that actually protect witness. And of course, we have the Anti-Corruption Act, we have the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, which seeks to protect witnesses, informers, assistants, investigators, but does not define who an informer is, which makes it difficult to actually think that they're actually talking about the same thing as a whistleblower. We also have the Public Officers Ethics Act of 2003, and I think it's Section 4 or something, which states that a person who without lawful excuse diverges information acquired in the course of acting under the Act is guilty of an offense and is liable to on conviction to a fine not exceeding 5 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years or both. You see here is actually kind of outlawing whistleblowing. We also have the Witness Protection Act, which my fellow panelist has talked about, which protects witnesses but doesn't protect a whistleblower. So that's you'll find that's what we find is very important to actually have a standalone legislation which categorically only deals with whistleblowers. Now, to just answer your question, this bill has been able to go quite a number of steps in the process of legislation in the National Assembly. We have passed the budget committee because it's a money bill. There's an aspect of reward, and I was able to successfully lobby for it to go past the budget and appropriation committee. After that, now it went to the JLAC, and I was also able to successfully lobby for it, and it has it passed. Then it now went back to the Speaker's office, which now it was sent to the government printer, and I'm happy to say that it has already been publicized. And now we are waiting, probably even today, should be coming for the first reading in the National Assembly. Lawmaking is quite a tedious process, it's a long process, but I am confident that this is a piece of legislation which is very important, and I have faith in my colleagues to actually support me and to be able to pass this piece of legislation before even the end of this term. I have a lot of faith. I've done my job as a member of parliament for Kitui County, and I'm confident that the people of Kitui County will re-elect me again. And of course, because it is one thing to enact law, but it's also another thing to make sure it's implemented. And I think given a second chance by the people of Kitui, I'll definitely make sure that this piece of legislation is implemented.
Sankal, having dealt with this directly as well, what would you have liked to see going forward? What are the recommendations you're making? Because you have dealt with this one-on-one.
Actually, just to maybe to inform you and the public, this parliament, I think, has been the most gracious in accepting the role that whistleblowers play, because both at the Senate and at the National Assembly, they exhaustively actually debated, and when I was fired, they dwelt into it. And the Honorable Shakil Shabir, Honorable Pasaris, actually nominated me to be an associate member for APNAC. It's an exclusive club for members of parliament, but they saw it fit that I be nominated there. Thirdly, or secondly, last week, the whole of last week, we had our annual seminar at Mombasa as accountants, the 38th annual seminar, which was graced by the Honorable Chief Justice, Martha Koome. And to have people of such caliber now sharing a podium with you, it means that whistleblowing has come of age. Yeah. It is not the days of David Munyankei when they were treated as social pariahs, even though they were trying to rescue us from the jaws of corruption. So I think, to answer your question, I think as it stands now, the only missing link, as Honorable Kasalu has said, is a standalone legislation purely dedicated and exclusively dedicated to whistleblowing. Yeah. Yeah, because I know it will have like even how you are admitted to the program. Because normally what happens when you report a case, you are a person of interest. Yeah. And that's the risky bit. That's the risky bit before you become a witness. So I believe it will take care of that transition from being a person of interest to being now a witness. Yeah. So I think the only missing link, and I believe the National Assembly has done its bit through Honorable Kasalu, is that legislation. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just a matter of pushing it through.
It's just a matter of pushing it through. Yeah. And I believe, I think we have to be very positive. It is not everything that does not work. Yeah, it will be passed and it will work because this country is governed by laws. There are those that have been properly implemented, and I believe this one, once it's passed, it will have follow-up. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you deal with that impact of when you whistle blew and then there was the conversation around you simply whistle blew because you could not be part of it? As in people said that you wanted to be part of it, that's the reason why you didn't bring it up, that you knew about it all this time, you didn't bring it up earlier on. How did you deal with that, and what was the truth behind why it came out when it came out? Because it had been happening for quite some time. Yeah. Yeah.
What I can tell you is that I think in this country, and I want to quote employers, meaning employers, it's like they have a script somewhere they run to. When I began, I told you there was outright blackmail and character assassination. Because if somebody says, I did this, ESCC is here, well represented, DCI is there, you go with evidence and say this guy is saying so-and-so did this, but he also did this, and this is the evidence. And you also prosecute, because no one is immune to be prosecuted. And I've consistently stated, I want also to be investigated. I don't have a problem with that. In any case, if you read all the days, all the whistleblowers, the script is the same. He missed a cut. And that's why we are saying, and Charity has said, is the moral fabric, the way we look at things. There is a quote I love quoting by Mark Twain. It says that whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect, because there is something that is not adding up. So it will come. You will have names. You'll be told there was a cut you missed, because maybe most people, quite a number of us maybe believe in that culture. So if you are different, they think either there is something wrong with yourself. So I've dealt with it maybe the best way I know. Sometimes we choose to ignore, because even if you are told you missed a cut, which cut? Who was there? Who participated? Because even the other party, they are the ones who should have said, we sat with this gentleman and he refused this cut. And this is the evidence. But you cannot just sit somewhere and become a keyboard warrior. Just lots of abuse, which for me, you don't even know me. So I've always chose to ignore it.
And Mariah, see, this is what I'm talking about, because his character assassination came thick and fast online, and everybody was talking about it. And then eventually now he was fired on flimsy reasons as cyberbullying. And the law allows you to actually prosecute someone based on that. And so we all know he's being prosecuted because of the whistleblowing part that he took in, that the law allows people to still take advantage, look for the little loopholes, and then pin him down. So how then do you protect a whistleblower from that sort of character assassination and even the backlash that comes with it?
Thank you, Trevor. If there is an institution which knows that corruption fights back, it's the EACC. And if those who are behind corruption can be or can have the courage of even fighting an institution, you can only imagine when it is an individual. Protection, Trevor, may not be as absolute as one may wish, because the character assassination and being cyberbullied may be by, again, anonymous persons whom you may not actually be able to isolate and prosecute. But the very fact that this law is missing is a major, major gap. Yeah. Because what Trevor, every viewer should know is that the whistleblower protection law is not just a law for which is targeting to just protect a whistleblower, perhaps by removing him from the society, by putting him in a safe house, by perhaps removing him out of the country. The framework is much, much bigger. And for us to realize it, we only have to have the law. Yeah. The first thing that it does is to transfer the primary responsibility of facilitating whistleblowers to the employers, to the private sector employers, as well as to the public sector employers, such that any other action that is being taken to protect a whistleblower is actually secondary. Yeah. You see, the very first duty is for every public and private authority, depending on the size, yeah, to have policies and procedures in place for facilitating of whistleblowing. Mm-hmm. Meaning, the very first responsibility, and it will be a crime not to have such policies and procedures for facilitating whistleblowing. And there will be a complete infrastructure of institutions to which whistleblowers can report, yeah, including the Commission on Administrative Justice, including an establishment of disclosure review committee, which is supposed to be looking into those disclosures, yeah, and including that committee having some powers to make some orders, which are only reviewable in the High Court, which is an administrative process and fairly a quick one. So when you do not have this law, yeah, you really do have it is also going to protect whistleblowers from civil or criminal litigation. Yeah. That is, the very fast reaction and response to a whistleblower is not to victimize or prosecute. Yeah. It is first of all to make an assessment, mm-hmm, of that report which has been made. The next one is to investigate it. And the approach is to protect the whistleblower, yeah, from that very baby steps, from the very beginnings, such that if it ended up being a malicious report, it is out of some measure which has been taken, some steps which, yeah, have been taken professionally to assess, to investigate, and ultimately come up with a decision. Yeah. But the approach is going to be first, you protect. Yeah. Number two, you as an employer ought to be having in place, and it becomes your primary responsibility to ensure that you are facilitating, because it is presumed, yeah, that any stakeholder, any genuine stakeholder, any shareholder in a company, mm-hmm, any director of a company would be interested in seeing that there is no corruption, that there is no embezzlement of assets which belong to that company. Yeah. That's the premise from which, but of course, there are those who are within, who are against, who are embezzling, and therefore there are also channels of reporting. If you notice that the persons who are supposed to be protecting this property are the ones who are also embezzling it or intermingling with it or abusing, yeah, an office, then you have the channels of reporting elsewhere. No. And once those safe channels are established, then it will become much easier. So what I'm saying is this: the entire infrastructure that is going to be laid by this law is very critical.
Yeah.
And we will continue missing it for as long as it is not there.
Okay.
The current law as it is will still remain extremely blunt in terms of protection of whistleblowers.
All right.
Yes.
Charity, there seems to be an agreement here that somehow the old ways of fighting corruption don't seem to be working. What other options are UNODC exploring in other countries, even Kenya as well, to find better ways of dealing with this?
As I said earlier, I think there's not going to be a quick fix solution towards this the scourge of corruption. It is something that has grown with us and has grown as capitalism has grown. But the convention that has almost universal application with over 184 countries having acceded to it is a very good tool that we're using to hold member states accountable. They have a reporting mechanisms in which they are supposed to report and say how far have we reached in either preventing or punishing or finding a way around some of the loopholes that have brought about that make it easy for corruption to thrive. So I think especially as we move on in the digital age, the development of tech solutions that reduce the human contact between money and the service is being reduced, making it a bit easier for corruption maybe not to thrive that much. Of course, it also has its loopholes. But one of the areas that we've been looking at is speaking to the young people, finding a way in which the young people can understand that corruption, really, they will be the ones that pay the heaviest price for the corrupt deals that this particular generation has forced upon them. When it comes to corrupt deals, in trade deals, corrupt deals in infrastructure, in procurement, the people who pay the heaviest are the youngest. And so they are coming up, we are supporting tech solutions, supporting them to really own their future and own the particular fight of this generation, which we do believe is a fight for the moral fabric of our society. It used to be that honesty was seen as something that pays, and now it is something that doesn't pay. It's seen as the young people have inherited a place where honesty is not the best policy. So for that to change, it has to start from the youngest generation. I really go back to the fact that the way in which the education is done of the young people has got to change. The way in which business is done, there's got to be true repercussions for doing business the corrupt way. And there's got to be things that we do in this current generation that we're able to champion people who come forward, who take the prize. I mean, justice does have a prize, and I really applaud those who come forward as whistleblowers, those who at great personal risk are ready to stand up for something that has to do with supporting and protecting the moral fiber of our society. And to those, they really deserve to be celebrated and supported. And I'm glad that we have EACC here with us, because they've been doing a great job in supporting that. But also the rest of the justice sector has been doing quite a great job when it comes to issues of trying to find the best evidence to make sure that the cases do go to court, that even those who have been seen as untouchable can be able to be prosecuted, and that there will be a repercussion for this. And I think as we move these tiny steps forward, they eventually become bigger steps as the younger people see the price that people pay for getting involved in corruption, and not just the rewards, the so-called rewards, very short-lived rewards of corruption. Yeah. So that's what I would have to say at this particular point on that. And as I said, it's going to be a whole society response, and not and individuals that do come forward have to be supported by, what Honorable Kasajo is doing is so fantastic in the fact that she's using her position to make sure that she makes a change in this kind of culture.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up, Charity, because then shouldn't we then change tack and just look for the younger generation, have some curriculum on integrity or something like that, so that we get them when they're still young? Because you've said right now, in the days of social media, all wealth and lavish lifestyles are glorified and people do everything to get there. So should we then start from the grassroots?
I think it should be a multi-pronged approach. Yes, you do approach the young people and you speak to them, but it has to be multi-pronged approach. Even those who are used to the lifestyle, there has to be a moment of reckoning that comes, and a moment of reckoning comes for, and meaning that nobody is above the law. But if it's a multi-pronged approach, looking at the young people, the ones who are not so young, and also the older generation, that is the way we can be able to, as a whole society, look and say that this is a scourge that we are paying. And of course, there's got to be involvement of all sectors of society, and really celebrating you as Citizen for bringing, as the fourth estate, for bringing this very much forward and making sure that the country is fully aware at times like this, that this is an issue that they need to pay attention to. So it is a whole society response.
All right, I'll take a quick break here on Daybreak. There's a lot of feedback coming through. I'll pass some of the questions to the panelists here. A lot of people are showing concern. In fact, Kent here wants to know from the EACC. He says that what is the EACC doing about the blunt law or legal framework? But we'll come back to that in just a bit. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. See you in just a bit.